And by that point, it's really motoring. It's not racing, but it's just the passion of it has just unfolded on every respect of the.
Jimmy Page was once a 13-year-old boy with a guitar and dreams of reaching the pinnacle of the music world. But do you know who inspired him and shaped his unique style? From blues icons to rockabilly guitarists, these 5 names were the foundation for Page's great musical journey. Let's find out who they were and why they had such a profound influence on one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Elmore James. Among the pioneering blues icons who helped shape the sound of modern rock, Elmore James stands out as an irreplaceable icon. With his powerful slide guitar technique, he not only left a profound mark on the American musical landscape, but also shook the world, reaching the ears and hearts of a young Jimmy Page across the Atlantic. James was not only known as the king of slide guitar, but he also inspired guitarists who would change a generation of music. As a teenager in England, Jimmy Page immersed himself in the world of American blues. In that journey of self-study and discovery, Elmore James occupied a very special place. Without the internet, without radio stations popularizing the genre, Page relied on rare recordings provided by collector Dave Williams to access James's primitive, edgy sound. Page later admitted that Elmore James's influence on him was profound and enlightening. James's style was unique. His signature electric slide guitar sounded like a soulful sigh, sharp, fierce, and filled with a nostalgic southern melancholy. He not only slid across the strings but also crossed the boundaries of popular music, breaking the limits of amplification, helping to lay the foundations for the heavy, violent sound of rock. Page once confessed that he struggled to master the technique. It was only when he saw Brian Jones, the Rolling Stones, perform at the Ealing Jazz Club that he realized the secret was in the tuning. "Suddenly I got it. It was the tuning," Page recalled in a 2012 interview. That moment of enlightenment not only opened the door to technique, but also helped shape the distinct musical identity Page brought to Led Zeppelin. Elmore James's music became a blueprint for aspiring guitarists like Page. Works like Dust My Broom, 1952, and The Sky Is Crying not only showcased his technical virtuosity, but also his Mississippi soul, speaking with a wistful yet universal voice. These tunes, which transcended the United States, inspired a British blues movement in the 90s. Bill Wyman of the Rolling Stones once described the first time he heard Elmore James as a moment when the earth shook on its axis. A generation of young British musicians, Page, Clapton, Beck, Richards, were drawn to the world of electric blues, and James was an indispensable guide. Jimmy Page's influence on Elmore James went beyond admiration. He regularly paid tribute to his mentor in his performances. One of the most notable was his 1999 performance of Shake Your Moneymaker with the Black Crowes. The blues rock anthem had been revived by Fleetwood Mac and George Thorogood, but Page infused it with a new vitality, a fusion of tradition and innovation. James's most visible Led Zeppelin track is perhaps In My Time of Dying, a sprawling, pulsing slide guitar and inventive textures that stand as one of the band's most extraordinary pieces. Here, Page doesn't imitate James, but uses his technique to tell his own story. In 1965, just 2 years after James's death, Page and Eric Clapton recorded tribute to Elmore, a quiet but soulful duet that captures the immortal spirit of the king of slide guitar. Elmore James's influence has never faded. On the 100th anniversary of his birth, a collection of 13 new interpretations has been released, showing that his music remains a constant source of inspiration. Though he was belatedly inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992 as an early influencer, his legacy is far from past. It's alive in his riffs, his slides, and in artists like Jimmy Page, who have carried his spirit into the modern age. Many guitar textbooks today teach Page's music, pointing out the very Elmore James elements: long-drawn riffs, classic electric blues rhythms, and a sense of foreboding. Page's approach to the blues was not just about learning, but about reinventing, transforming, keeping the language of the blues alive, but with a different, stronger, more contemporary voice. Elmore James and his magical slide guitar left a lasting mark on Jimmy Page's playing. But what about the wild, rebellious side of his music? Was it Gene Vincent, the rockabilly rebel, who ignited that flame in Jimmy Page? That's when Gene Vincent, the unruly pioneer of rockabilly, came along and took the world's attention. Gene Vincent, As a teenager, Jimmy Page began to explore the blues, the foundation of his later guitar style. But then a new wind blew in. The image of rockabilly superstar Gene Vincent, wearing a leather jacket, playing music with fire and personality, captivated Page. Vincent's 1956 song, Bebop-A-Lula, simple and raw, had a strange power, shaking the young man's heart. Vincent's music was powerful, wild, and unlike anyone else. It was that roughness that opened up a new direction for Page, making him realize that music was not just about technique but also about emotion, an explosion of personality. Fans once called Vincent the Screaming N, because of the violence in his style, and it was that violence that touched Page's soul. Page once recalled being overwhelmed when he first saw the film Hot Rod Gang 1958, where Vincent's band with their shiny Fender guitars appeared to come from another world. "Oh my God," Page could only exclaim. To him, the guitar looked like a spaceship, the colors like a racing car. From the sound to the image, everything was so captivating that it was mesmerizing. Page learned that rock music could affect both the eyes and the ears, a lesson he carried with him when building Led Zeppelin later. Because of his love for Vincent, Page was determined to take up the guitar more seriously. At only 15, he formed his first two bands, the Paramounts and Red Ed Lewis and the Redcaps, both with a strong rockabilly feel. Vincent's songs were not easy to play. Page had to practice a lot, even changing his guitar to create the right sound like his idol. Vincent's influence is still evident in Page's songwriting, especially in his catchy opening riffs, such as on Whole Lotta Love. Page says that it was his youthful love of Vincent's intros that inspired him to write such powerful melodies. Vincent's influence wasn't limited to Page. His close friend and fellow guitar legend Jeff Beck was also fascinated by Vincent. The two bonded over their shared love of Gene Vincent and Ricky Nelson recordings. They shared, analyzed, and even competed to see who could play the songs better. These practice sessions not only honed their skills but also created a sense of harmony. In Vincent's band, the lead guitarist was Cliff Gallup, a man whom both Page and Beck respected. Gallup was so skilled and creative that Beck once called him his biggest influence. It was Gallup who inspired them to new advances in technique and expression in guitar playing. Suppose Gene Vincent was the rebel who lit rockabilly with wild and explosive energy, who laid the solid foundation for modern blues, a genre that has quietly flowed through America and nurtured many rock legends since. The answer lies in an irreplaceable name, Muddy Waters, the man who took the blues from the muddy countryside to the bright lights of Chicago. Muddy Waters, however, it was not Waters' technical prowess that especially attracted Page. Rather, it was the raw and genuine passion that he expressed via each note. There was a moment when Jimmy Page explained that when he was younger, he had a difficult time locating records of Muddy Waters. At the time, his music was not receiving a lot of attention on British radio. The uncommon recordings that he discovered were comparable to priceless jewels. These songs were more than just music. They were an entire universe of feelings that Page would never be able to forget. Neither intricate chords nor fancy methods were required for Waters to perform. It was with all of his heart that he sang and played the guitar. Page gained a valuable insight as a result of this experience. Music is not only for listening to, rather it is for feeling. Page was enthralled by how Waters provided songs like Standing Around Crying and I Can't Be Satisfied with a somber and pensive tone. When Page was initially exposed to the song Standing Around Crying, he recalled that Waters' performance left him stunned and even nauseated by the overwhelming intensity of the song's emotional content, because the music was so raw and primal, rather than because it was so technically advanced. This was without a doubt one of the most profound musical experiences that Page had ever had in his life. The effect of Muddy Waters extended beyond the scope of particular songs. Jimmy Page, who would later become a member of Led Zeppelin, learned from him how to create an atmosphere in addition to an emotion that penetrates the entire song. Not all bands are capable of doing it. There were a lot of blues musicians at the time who were just attempting to imitate techniques. But Led Zeppelin was different. They were able to condense the essence of the blues, making it more powerful and alive. You Shook Me and Whole Lotta Love are two of the most well-known songs by Led Zeppelin. and both of these songs reflect the influence of Muddy Waters. In spite of the fact that Waters has been deceased since 1983, his legacy continues to remain significant. In several respects, contemporary rock music continues to carry the blues blood that Waters was the inspiration for. Jimmy Page learned from Muddy Waters that music doesn't need to be too elaborate, it just needs to be genuine enough to touch the listener's heart. And perhaps, that is also what makes music live forever, beyond time and space. Just like the name Muddy Waters, quiet but immortal. And who is next? Les Paul. Jimmy Page's performance and studio sound were profoundly influenced by the technological advancements made by inventor Les Paul, in addition to his musical approaches and skills. Les Paul supplied the instruments that would shape Led Zeppelin's sound, while Page learned playing techniques from blues and rockabilly greats. An important turning point in rock history came when Page traded in his Fender Telecaster for a Gibson Les Paul. As the band's fame skyrocketed, Page's demands changed, even though he had played his Telecaster substantially on Led Zeppelin's debut record. I knew that Les Paul guitars were very user-friendly since they put out a lot of level when you plugged them into the amplifier because they had a double coil pickup, whereas the Telecaster had a solo coil pickup, said Page. The choice to choose the Les Paul was based on practical considerations. With the sort of volume that I now needed to put out in live situations, although I was using controlled feedback, I found that the Telecaster was starting to squeal a bit, the musician said. The Les Paul, on the other hand, would let you work with and manipulate it more readily while still providing feedback through the amplifier and speakers. The literal tone and frequency that was returned on the feedback might be changed. Eagles guitarist Joe Walsh was the one from whom Page got his famous #1 Les Paul, The overall cost of the guitar, including Walsh's travel expenditures to personally deliver it, was around $1,200. Neither performer had any idea that their transaction would go down in history books. Instantaneously and dramatically, the Les Paul altered Page's tone. I played the Les Paul on Whole Lotta Love and What Is and What Should Never Be, and that decided it for me, he said. My initial decision for Led Zeppelin II was to create a sonically different choice from the previous album. I've always wanted to do that. Similar to how the Fender Telecaster served as the foundation for Led Zeppelin I, the Les Paul standard provided the aural texture around which the second album was formed. Les Paul was an innovator in many ways, including the creation of legendary guitars and the use of groundbreaking multi-track recording techniques. A revolutionary concept for sound-on-sound recording came to Paul in 1949 when Bing Crosby gave him an Ampex tape recorder. I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote down the idea that was suddenly there in my head. And it was like God had done it, recalled Paul. Thanks to this breakthrough, artists could add new layers to previously recorded recordings while listening to them. Page, who was also a pioneering producer, took cues from these methods. Les Paul, he's the man who started everything, multi-track recording. The electric guitar, he's just a genius, wrote to Page. I think he was the first to use a 4-track, or was it an 8-track, recording machine, because it allowed bands to add layers of overdubs in real time. The multi-track recorder was crucial to the musical experimentation that characterized music in the 90s. They couldn't have pulled off many of Led Zeppelin's intricate studio arrangements without Paul's ingenuity. Les Paul went beyond Page's adoration for his technical breakthroughs. Page had a deep affection for Les Paul as a person. It seems like he began using multi-track recording in 1945. I had the pleasure of meeting him once. He has always been a favorite of mine, and Jeff Beck's Page recalled. Page and Les Paul's relationship is a prime example of the enduring impact that technology pioneers may have on musicians of all ages. Both the solid body electric guitar and multi-track recording were innovations by Les Paul that allowed Page to realize his creative vision. Page showed off his inventiveness by making a plethora of changes to his Les Pauls, especially his number 2. Featuring 4 push-pull control pots that enabled pickup splitting, phase switching, and series parallel options, creating over 21 possible tone combinations. This instrument grew into what may have been rock's most flexible guitar. Originally, it was almost indistinguishable from his original Les Paul. And now, who do you think will close the list today? Is it what you expect? Scotty Moore and James Burton, 2 pioneering guitarists, shaped the foundation of rock music history and profoundly influenced a young Jimmy Page's earliest musical aspirations. Scotty Moore and James Burton. Their distinctive picking styles and innovative approaches to the instrument provided crucial building blocks for Page's developing sound. At the heart of Page's initial guitar journey was a specific moment of musical revelation. Baby Let's Play House, featuring Scotty Moore's groundbreaking guitar work with Elvis Presley, literally stopped the young Page in his tracks. This pivotal recording became the catalyst that inspired him to take up the guitar. Moore quickly ascended to become Page's first guitar hero, establishing a musical connection that would last throughout his career. Page himself acknowledged this formative influence. Scotty Moore had been a major inspiration in my early transitory days. From acoustic to electric guitar, his character guitar playing on those early Elvis Sun recordings, and later at EC, was monumental. Moore's innovative approach helped Page recognize the importance of the electric guitar approach to music. Concurrently, James Burton's precise melodic playing with Ricky Nelson provided another crucial dimension to Page's developing style. Throughout his teenage years, Page dedicated himself to mastering their techniques, often spending hours, sometimes days, attempting to replicate particular guitar solos. This dedication found a parallel in his friendship with fellow guitarist Jeff Beck. According to Albert Lee, who knew them both as teenagers, back in 1961, when I was 17 and Jimmy was 16, we used to hang out and play together. I remember I had a press cutting in my wallet of Scotty, Bill, and DJ, and Jimmy had one of James Burton. Both were totally immersed in American R&R guitar playing. Moore and Burton's influence materialized directly in Page's playing with Led Zeppelin. Most significantly, Page would reprise Moore's playing from Baby Let's Play House in the live version of Whole Lotta Love, featured on The Song Remains the Same, demonstrating how thoroughly he had absorbed those early rockabilly licks. Now, what do you think about these 5 names? What do you feel most clearly from them through Jimmy Page's music? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you and see you in the next videos.